have. So before I get into the topic, I just want to introduce Dell EMC data protection. I'm sure all of you here are aware of the way in which we participate in the data protection market, both from an appliances as well as from a software perspective. We bring solutions that flexibly allow customers to do data protection and recovery regardless of what their SLA needs are. Starting from replication to backup all the way to archives, and we're going to see some of those solutions here today. We are part of the Dell family, same as VMware, so you're going to see a lot of interaction and integration with VMware as we go through today's discussion. And we've kind of broken this up into three important parts. 8 months is a long time, and we've done a lot in that time, so we're going to do our best to bring whatever is newest in front of you. So I'm going to kick it off. My name is Ranga. I lead product management for appliances. So that includes data domain, our integrated appliances family. And I'm going to be talking for roughly about 40-45 minutes about our brand new product, DP4400. So that's what I'm going to be spending most of my time on, specifically targeted towards the mid-market, mid-enterprises. So we're going to go into a lot of details into that. And then Levi is going to take it up from me. At that point, he's going to talk about one specific use case that's available with the 4400. It's also available with our software, and that is the cloud disaster recovery. So I heard a lot of you introducing yourselves as cloud specialists, so really looking forward to your inputs in that session as well. And then finally, going back to the integration with VMware, Colin will be talking about our integration with VMware vCloud Director, and that will be, again, a feature that's available with our 4400, all our other appliances, as well as with the rest of the software, right? So that's how we have stacked it up. Again, we'll play according to where the questions come from. We understand that we are here for the interaction, so we are very flexible with the agenda. We can fine-tune it as we move forward. Good deal? Cool? Okay, so let's get into it. In this session, we are primarily focusing very clearly on data protection for mid-sized organizations. Right? When you look at data domain as a market leader in the purpose-built backup appliances, we've been catering both the mid-sizes as well as enterprises. And in that process, we have learned a lot about what are the most important needs driving the mid-sized organizations. Right? All of us here know that data is exploding, not going to talk about it. So many cloud experts here, so there's a lot of cloud extensibility that the mid-sized organizations are looking for. And, it translates into 2 or 3 key trends. First is simplicity. Just don't make me jump through so many hoops, make it very simple for me. I think we hear it day in, day out. In VM world, we got a lot of emphasis for that as well. The second one is economics, right? Give me the lowest cost to protect. I have to spend my money on so many other things. Help me economize, and then make it very easy for me to go to cloud. And at the same time, don't forget performance, don't forget ecosystem. Right? That's kind of the message we are hearing. Eager to get your feedback as we move forward. And when we look at the marketplace today, I'm sure we all went through VMworld. We saw a lot of vendors there, including Dell EMC. And one thing that stands out is there's a lot of innovation in the market today. We are seeing a lot of emphasis on simplicity, which is like double thumbs up. Right? That's what we want to see. But at the same time, we are seeing quite a few gaps in coverage. VMworld, of course, we are talking about VMware. Everybody focuses on it. But it's not as if our companies have given up on NAS. It's not as if there are other applications that don't need to get protected. So there is a lot of coverage that we are seeing as a gap with the solutions that are out there, including solutions that come from us. And that's where we've kind of innovated in the 4400. I'm going to talk about that quite a bit. And the other 2 aspects of performance and efficiencies. Nobody wants to pay more than they need to. Nobody wants to kind of not have the best deduplication out there. And that's really where we bring some strengths to the table, and we're going to talk about that as well. So if you were to summarize everything together, we need to cut down the cost to protect, and that, in our opinion, in our assessment, is a weakness in the market out there, right? When you look at it, especially from a mid-market perspective. And that's kind of the thesis with which we are bringing the 4400 to the market, right? We've designed 4400 specifically to meet those challenges that we talked about in the previous slide around performance, efficiencies, economics, cloud, and you're going to see that resonate all through the presentation, right? Two very simple messages with 4400. It's an integrated data protection appliance. We launched our integrated appliance portfolio last year in Dell world, Dell Technologies world, Dell EMC world, it keeps changing. And this year, we are adding 4400 as a new entrant into that integrated appliance family. It's
so the integrated appliances that Dell was selling before the EMC acquisition, you're not counting?
No, that included as well, but we introduced integrated data protection appliance as a new product family last year, right? And that was primarily driven by the heritage EMC assets from a data protection perspective. Here, we are actually bringing it together. It is actually a PowerEdge server-based appliance, which delivers data protection specifically for the mid-size organizations from a capacity perspective, right? And two key messages that I want to hone in on. First is the lowest cost to protect, right? It's a superlative. It's not lower. It's not, compared to, we are going out there and saying, this is the lowest cost to protect, and we're going to explain how. And there is a guarantee program that's backing it up. We'll be talking about that as well, right? So that's the 4400. It's an integrated appliance, and let's dig more into it. Now, you've all been in the data protection space, in the IT space for a very long time, and we all know how backup architecture looks like. You have the media servers, the backup servers, you have the actual protection storage, which is where data domain plays, or maybe you have tape, maybe you have cloud, and then there is a need for us to do search. GDPR has increased that need today. We have a need to do reporting, we need dashboards. All of that have led to a lot of components traditionally. An integrated appliance fundamentally converges all those components into a single appliance. 4400 is no different, right? Similar to any integrated appliance, you would see that it is bringing in the backup software, it is bringing in the protection storage, and it's bringing in a bunch of additional capabilities from a cloud ecosystem and integration perspective. In a nutshell, that's 4400. It takes away from customers the need for designing the solution from ground up, the need to architect the backup software and the protection storage separately, and the need for you to manage them as individual independent pieces. At the time of initial configuration, at the time of upgrade, all through the life cycle, it's an integrated appliance with an integrated stack, right? And when you look at the functionality that it brings to the table, of course, it brings in the protection storage. It is based on our data domain technology. So all the deduplication efficiencies, performance efficiencies that are associated with data domain comes into the picture. The backup software is based on our data protection suite. So with that comes in the really expansive ecosystem and the integration benefits that we bring to the table. It also brings in system management capabilities. I'm going to walk you through a very quick demo on it. And from a hardware perspective, it's a power-packed PowerEdge server appliance. So it has NVMe flash, primarily for instant access and restores. It has a bunch of drives, of course, delivering the protection capacity. And all of that is brought together in a factory-integrated 2U appliance. Again, we designed it with the mid-market in mind, and therefore, we wanted to make sure that it is taking in the lowest form factor possible with the highest density, highest power that we can bring to the table. As I mentioned before, in the traditional architecture where it takes days for us to actually bring the solution together, because it's all factory integrated and brought to you as a plug and play kind of environment, we can bring up the appliance in a matter of a few hours. And upgrading is also a single click that is driven through the appliance. The important thing that I wanted to call out was on the capacity front. So from a usable capacity perspective, the appliance starts at 24 TB. Post dedupe, the usable capacity is 24 TB, and we can grow in 12 TB increments all the way up to 96 TB usable capacity. Now, the beauty of it is that all the storage is already pre-packaged into the appliance, so you don't need to open the appliance and add more disks or anything like that. Again, mid-market.
So I buy a software unlock
It's
code?
a software unlock, it's a license unlock. Apply the license, you're going to open up more capacity all the way up to 96 TB. That's on the appliance. Additionally, we provide long-term retention to the cloud through our feature called Cloud Tier, and that can bump up another 2x capacity in the cloud, taking us all the way up to 192 TB in the cloud. We're going to talk a little bit more about Cloud Tier, but again, from a capacity perspective, post-dedupe, we can go up to a maximum of 96 TB on-prem and 192 TB in the cloud.
So is that 384 total, or is that 192 total?
It is 96 plus 192 is 288.
288.
Total, yeah.
Total, okay.
That's right. Again, cloud is, an optional thing. It could be an ECS storage if you want it to be on-prem cloud, or it could be a public cloud. So just for transparency, it's 96 TB in the appliance, another 192 TB there. And that's a fact that has resonated a lot with many of the customers that we've been working with as design partners for this appliance. A fact that we can just get a software license and turn it on, it reduces another layer of complexity from a scaling perspective. As long as the needs are up to 96 TB, it's already available in the device. And this is usable capacity that we're talking about.
The flip side of that coin is the customer who is annoyed that he owns the hardware but can't use all of it.
That is right.
That's,
The appliance
some
is more powerful
some
than...
customers understand, and some
Exactly.
customers are really annoyed at the, oh, you're going to charge me extra to use the thing that's already in my data center? But
Yeah.
get it.
The alternative, of course, is for them to buy the 96 TB right at the outset, and they are definitely going to, have that option.
And one of the goals too with the 4400 was to really mimic the cloud model of pay for what you use. Why pay for hardware that you're not using? Pay for the drip, pay for the utilization of that as you utilize it. And really, as we see the shift in how customers are approaching their solutions as a whole and wanting that truly, I'm not utilizing this, why should I have to pay for it?
But from the customer perspective, there's a huge difference between paying for what I use in the cloud and paying for physical stuff that's delivered to my data center that you've only licensed me to use part of.
Right.
That's a big psychological difference. Because if I'm not using it in the cloud, AWS can sell that capacity to someone else.
That's a totally fair perspective. Again, two sides of the coin.
Yeah. And I'm not arguing that it's right or wrong. It's
Yes,
just,
no, and absolutely, and this goes back to what Ranga had said, is if a customer does feel that way, they absolutely could buy the full 96 usable terabytes day one.
Yep.
But again, kind of what we've seen is, I want to have 3 years of capacity, but if I only have to pay for what I use as I need it, then that is advantageous to me as a customer. So that's kind of that, and we're trying to walk that line with them. And so again, that's what we had in mind with this, and we are trying to look more towards what customers are gravitating for here in the future, and as opposed to the past thinking around it. But you're absolutely right. There are still those out there that have that kind of mindset there within.
Absolutely. It is in their data center for sure. Yeah.
Do you have scalability from a hardware perspective by adding more nodes, or is this meant to be just a one?
This is meant to be a single appliance, so it'll go up to a 96 TB if your 3-year growth patterns are within 92 TB in the appliance and 96 in the appliance and 192 in the cloud. That's the capacity fit for this solution.
And to that point, one of the things we'll talk about here towards the end is the future-proof storage loyalty program, which helps to address specifically those concerns around, okay, well, I don't know, what if I have explosive growth? What if we acquire a company that all of a sudden now this is too large for me? So we'll get into that here in a bit as well.
Gotcha.
The other thing that we introduced with the 4400, and it's also available with our software customers, is a very heavy emphasis on simplicity, right? From a management perspective, we talked about all this nice functionality that is coming to the table, but if using each of those is very complicated, then the story quickly becomes very challenging, right? So we've introduced a new interface called IDPA System Manager, which primarily focuses on what are the most important needs that a customer has, especially again thinking of it from the mid-size enterprise perspective. It provides dashboards. It gives a very easy way to look at stuff that's working and not working and go troubleshoot it. Setting up policies while bringing in the flexibility that we are pretty popular for, and finally a reporting perspective, right? All of this is driven through a modern new UI that's based on HTML5, and actually I'm going to walk you through a few screenshots there. So when a customer logs into the 4400, this is the kind of a dashboard that's going to welcome them. Very standard dashboard, right? You can either look at the details, you can look at the exceptions. Pretty much has the standard tenets that you would expect from any dashboard, like how much capacity am I using up? Are there failures? Is everything doing good? Am I running out of space? Are there any alerts that I need to go and address? So I wouldn't say that there's anything surprising here. This is the daily dashboard that we would expect customers to be using to drive their business fundamentally, right? It's not like they want to do a deep dive every day unless if there is an issue, right? We do provide a lot of configurability there. We can create a dashboard. We do have a canned dashboard which is only looking at the exceptions, but let's say you didn't want all these widgets and you wanted just something that you are interested in, you can configure that, add your own dashboard, figure out what are the widgets that you want in that dashboard. Again, pretty standard when you look at it from a dashboarding perspective. And that flexibility is available here. Again, depending on the user, this user might be an application admin who's only worried about those applications that are being protected, or it could be a general IT admin who's worried about the health of the appliance. So depending on that, we provide the flexibility to pick what a user needs, right? And naturally, the time dimension is very important there. So pretty much each of these widgets will give you the flexibility to either go 24 days, 24 hours, a week, or a month, depending on what you're actually interested in.
So from the perspective of a service provider that may consume this, right? I think the financial model is a
very
step
attractive
in the right path for service providers. There's some more questions I'd like to ask there when we get
Please.
down the road. But is this multi-tenant capable if a provider wants to open up the interface for their tenants to look at their usage, the health, capacity, kind of the state of their system or their workload data?
So this provides a certain level of role-based access and control, depending on what administrative privileges you want to grant to the users, to the extent of sharing a single appliance between multiple tenants and letting them get separate access. Right. We are working in that direction. Now note that this is a 96 TB appliance. Right? So when we get to the bigger appliances where multi-tenancy plays a bigger role, we do have those abilities. But here we want to kind of, again, back to the same discussion, walk a very fine line between simplicity and providing more knobs. And as I go through it, you'll see that in some places we have provided that flexibility by tucking it away in places where you will go only if you need to. Right? So there is role-based access, but not multi-tenancy to the level of going to the individual clients. And Emmett?
Yeah, but I think the main heart of your question was seeing what users are utilizing, what they're eating through from a client perspective, what they're consuming.
Yep.
Excuse me. That capability is there. So you are able to see, so for example, if we had multiple different customers using the 4400s, we'd be able to drill in and see, okay, this is a utilization for this one and that one, the different client consumption there, and we're able to go even more granular and more detailed into that. Into that reporting as well.
Yeah, and that's important, right? The I guess crux of that, or the idea, was to empower the client to have a capability to have the visibility and transparency on their own.
Yep.
And then when they need to engage us for questions or deeper looks, we have the back end access to go a few layers down.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And when we mention the word service provider, immediately the word API comes into the picture. And through APIs, we'll be able to derive much of this information in case service providers want to integrate this into their own dashboards. Right?
And to that point as well, one of the things we'll be talking about later is our integration with vCloud Director, which I think really plays in the heart of what service providers are looking for these days, especially in terms of VMware. So we'll get into that.
And we're going to get into that in the third part of the presentation.
So you've got APIs, obviously, can you do SAML for authentication?
Can we do, sorry?
SAML for authentication, SSO.
We can do SSO using the system manager, yes. Yep.
So single sign-on capability is built into it, yes.
With SAML?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Naturally, when you have a dashboard, if there are failures, we want to click into that. That takes you into this page, and you can filter this based on whatever you're really interested in. So if we want to look at the backup jobs that have failed or completed with exceptions, it'll bring that up, and then you can drill down into that to look at what exactly has failed. In this case, it's a client failure. From the same page, you can actually go into the clients, and you can look at more information on what exactly has failed in that particular client, right? Again, a lot of richness in the product, which is kind of simplified or trivialized depending on which side of the camp you are in when you look at this UI, right? That's from hey, is everything running fine? Again, a very important aspect is capacity, and we do want to look at how the capacity utilization is, the health of the systems. So basically, from a troubleshooting perspective, back to your point, you can go up to a very high level with this UI, and then if you need to do even more troubleshooting, there are ways to open up more UIs and get into further detail on that as well. Right, that's on the dashboard. I wanted to go into the other part of troubleshooting, which is around alerts. So you can drill into the alerts, you can look at that. You can get to any level of information. The next thing that customers want to do is set up policies, right? The system comes all pre-integrated. So a big part of what we would normally do around setting up the system, setting up the solution is gone now. So you power it on, the system is up and running. The next immediate set is to do the policies. We look at policies as a triad, which consists of data sets, schedules, and retentions. And we've seen that this flexibility works a lot for organizations that we have worked with. So retention schedule is, of course, how long you're going to keep your backup. Schedule is how often you want to back it up. And data set is the actual data set that you want to back up, right? So setting up a policy, we would start with setting up the data set. And here is where I want to kind of make a call out to that flexibility that we have. We support a huge set of applications. Of course, most people are interested in VMware, and that's prioritized, but we do have the ability to support a bunch of applications, set up the policy, select the files, folders that you want to handle. Another point that I want to call out there is that we support dynamic policies. I'm sure you would have known this from our data protection suite. When a new VM is added, as long as it complies with a certain set of rules that you have set up, it automatically gets protected. When a VM is deleted, it automatically gets removed from the protection class. So all that dynamic policies are built into it. We don't even talk about it because it's kind of table stakes for any product that you need to do for VMware. Right?
But just for the benefit of whoever is watching, can you just quickly, briefly say that
Absolutely.
what
Absolutely.
it actually catches on?
Absolutely.
Especially, does it actually look at tags, for example?
It does. So it looks at tabs, it looks at tags, it looks at whatever we might have in the name. For instance, if an organization is going to brand every name of the VM with the department that it belongs to, it can use that. It can use a bunch of additional attributes. It's a very rich, detailed filter criteria that you can use. I don't know if I have a screenshot on this here, but
yeah. So tags, obviously, and tags
Absolutely.
are becoming so much more relevant these days. That is a huge option there that you can choose. But then also you can go down to the VM folder, the vApp, the actual cluster. You can do naming conventions if it contains. You can do very rich rules on top.
Pattern matching.
If then, and so you can actually build. So if it's in this V folder, but it has this name, then don't back it up. So you can get very baseline default, but then you can go very granular to apply different rules on top of it. And the whole idea there as well is let's help automate this process as much as possible. And one of the cool things with this is we actually will ping the vCenter instance before we run the backup to make sure, hey, if something was just added, let's include it in the policy so we don't miss it.
Hence dynamic, yeah.
So that's another big key part of it too.
So again, for the simple user tags, that's the most popular. And then if you're a more advanced user, you want all these other knobs, they are available, right?
So maybe it could be odd, but since something similar happens to our customer. Okay, I understood that if you add virtual machine, it's automatically added to the policy. What if it's being deleted? I mean, the old backup,
Are safe.
The old backup are
The old backups are safe because they are for retention purposes. You might want to go and look at that VM even though you have deleted it. But you are not going to again try backing up the deleted VM and give an alert that there's a problem. That's where, it connects with the vCenter to know what happened. And the future backups will not include the deleted VM. But, compliance is a big part why you do backup. And we are very sensitive to that.
Yeah, but
usually we found that this wasn't possible, but it wasn't compliant with rules that we set. So,
Absolutely. So the retention policy that you set around those rules will continue to maintain and be in place there, even once that VM has been expired. And what's actually interesting, I have a customer that's using the rules in a little bit of a different way. They have a policy that when they decommission a VM, they change the name to decom. And so even when it's in that decom state, they don't want to be backing it up anymore. Say the rule that says if the name contains decom, no longer back it up anymore. So it's another way.
That's the flexibility.
You can do it to be very interesting around how you want to leverage it.
so I just wanted to check about something else then. So, okay, we are talking about VM backups and all that, but sometimes, so for example, if you're backing up data in a particular way, and say GDPR is a big thing, right? And you delete something or you want to remove some identity. Does it go back into the backups and say, okay, we're going to find something, everything related to that particular thing and delete that?
Not yet.
Well,
Working on it?
that's actually practically impossible. If you're talking about a record in a database and the database program backed up the MDB, that's the SQL server, there's no way to do that.
It is coming up a lot in GDPR conversations. So the policy has kind of gone forward and said this is what needs to be done. The technical feasibility is not yet there.
and-
There's a lot of research going on
And
there.
GDPR does say reasonable effort, not
Reasonable effort.
without must.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean,
So some court has to decide that,
Is it reasonable?
yes, you have 500 backups of your Oracle database, you have to restore every one of them, delete that record and back it up again. That's not reasonable.
so I'm not disputing, obviously, the technical challenges of it, but I'm just saying that, if a company starts working on it, or at least put some effort into doing it, then at least you get somewhere.
So that's an interesting point, and you're very right on the nose from a structured standpoint. But one of the things we'll talk about from an unstructured standpoint is our ability to do search and be able to drill in from that perspective to see from that aspect where it is from an unstructured standpoint for that specific data set or name or whatever it is, and the ability to drill in and see where that may lie from that perspective gives you that visibility as well, and we'll talk about that.
Which again is built into the plans. It doesn't go back and delete, which hopefully the future will take us there.
But you can identify where it is and then be able to do things with it from that standpoint.
The next aspect of policy creation is, of course, adding the schedule. When do you want to back it up? How often? And the third one is retention. And finally, you can just enable the policy that you have created, and that's going to take it into the regular daily or hourly or whatever you have set up backup stream, right? That's the second aspect. The third one is reports. Part and parcel of any IT infrastructure is the ability to generate reports, and we do have a lot of reports looking at different aspects, including the health aspects of the system, the capacity utilization, the performance, backup speeds, how much you're getting, the client statistics that Emmett was talking about earlier. All of that is available through reports. Again, accessible through the same UI. You can run it. You can look at the failures, how much capacity is being utilized. A lot of other aspects. Now, I didn't walk you through restores. I didn't walk you through the search. There's so much functionality built into the product as well as the UI. Given the number of topics that we wanted to bring in here, we weren't able to put it all together. But we do have a video. We are very happy to share that with you if you're interested, which walks through each and every aspect of the appliance from a UI perspective.
Going back to reports, do you also have management packs for Log Insight, VROPS, to integrate and get reports from there?
Yeah, so native plugins into VROPS is enabled out of the gate with the appliance, so you can actually do direct integration in there, and it's not via having to do REST API scripting. It is a plugin in there so that you can see within VROPS that reporting aspect.
VROPs, okay, yeah. Cool, so that was on this simplicity piece, right? There's another aspect of simplicity, which is the initial configuration that typically takes around 30 to 45 minutes to complete. Again, I skipped that part. If there's interest, we have separate videos looking at that. Happy to share them with you, right? Or maybe the folks there are actually tweeting out links to that. The other aspect that I wanted to call out is the ecosystem, right? VMware is great. VMware is very important. It's part of our family. We are very happy that the appliance is optimized for VMware protection. But when we look at enterprises, when we look at mid-sized enterprises, there is more than VMware. There's all the NAS backups that need to be driven. There are the Oracle administrators who want to take their RMAN backups. There are all the newfangled applications that come up like MongoDB, MariaDB, which need to be backed up. The appliance 4400 takes care of all of them, right? So it supports the classic data protection capabilities through our data protection suite, which is where all the NAS backups and everything come in. It also supports application direct backups from an Oracle or a SQL perspective, where an application administrator can directly take a backup and drive it into data domain. We also have the ability through our Boost ecosystem to present the appliance as an NFS mount point for applications like MariaDB or NoSQL or MongoDB to back up into the appliance, or homegrown applications. Just treat it as an NFS mount point, push it in there, and then everything is all the other simplicity aspects of the appliance you're going to get immediately, right? So in that coin of simplicity and flexibility, going back to the early challenges that I talked to you about, here is the aspect of flexibility that I want to call out. You don't want a different solution for each of your workloads if you're a distributed workload. 4400 brings it all together without compromising on the simplicity.
For physical servers, is that agent-based?
Yes.
Is it all manageable from the appliance? And
It's all manageable
pushed
from the
out?
appliance, yep. Did you want to add something?
I was just going to add on the native application integration. One of the key aspects there as well is, even though we can enable the Oracle admins or the DBAs as a whole to be able to control their own backups and restores, we can also have that reporting capability that Ranga was going through on top of that. So we can still see through the appliance to make sure that we are in compliance, and we have that auditing capability to make sure that while we're giving them control, they're not going and being cowboys and doing what's outside of policy.
Exactly.
Control.
The guardrails.
So let's give them control, but put guardrails and governance around it.
Yep. Oh, and the other part of the ecosystem is, of course, the cloud ecosystem, right? We're going to talk more about the cloud. Let me hold on to that. This should be no surprise to anybody. We have probably the best integration out there with VMware. A lot of different aspects. We're going to go into more details into the vCloud director. Colin is going to walk us through that, and I see that Yogesh is here from VMware as well to kind of give the VMware side of the integration, right? So we'll go into more details there. I think the one other point that I want to call out here is, as you scale to more VMs, there's a very simple and cost-effective solution. And when you look at the solutions out there, this is probably, this is the appliance that can actually get you to the maximum number of VMs protected in the 2U form factor, right? Lot to go there. Let me build this up so that we can walk through all of it. I already mentioned that it's PowerEdge based. So all the performance, efficiency, security, invulnerability aspects that are associated with our Dell PowerEdge servers are completely inherited by the appliance, right? We've perfected, so to say, the art of source-side deduplication. This comes through our Boost ecosystem, where we are capable of doing deduplication at the client side, at the source side, before even pushing it into the appliance. And that technology is available with the 4400. The appliance has NVMe inside, which we use for instant access and restores, driving very high random IOPS so that we can quickly restore any of the VMs that customers might be interested in. We talked about Boost earlier, and a lot of hero numbers to go with it, right? Again, based on data domain technology, so that gives us a lot of deduplication efficiencies for the 4400. Mentioned I'll talk about cloud. You see how I'm doing on time. Doing good. So on cloud, there are two key use cases that I wanted to talk about. One is cloud tier. The second is cloud DR. right? Two different purposes, right? Customers want to retain their data for 7 years endlessly. We hear so many different compliance requirements that have increased the life of data. You don't want to keep it all in the appliance in your data center. You might want to push it into the public cloud. You might want to push it into your ECS on-prem. That is enabled through cloud tier, long-term retention, right? Very easily driven through the UI that I talked to you about. You just set up policies. After 14 days, send my backups to the cloud. Or after a month, send it to the cloud. Delete it after 2 years or never delete it. You can set up all those policies and automatically it is driven into the cloud, right? The appliance handles all the communication with the cloud. There isn't a separate gateway, another VM that you need to run outside, another appliance that you need to run outside, no caveats, nothing. Set it up, it will push the data into the cloud. And for those customers who are new to the appliance or new to the cloud or new to this concept, we offer 5 terabytes of cloud tier packaged with the appliance so that customers can go use it with the cloud of their choice.
So I would assume that anything north of 5 terabytes, there's a incremental purchase
There is a
for
license.
capacity?
Yes.
So a couple points of clarification. That's on the amount of terabytes consumed from the bucket. So one of the key points with what we're doing with cloud tiering is we're still leveraging that native deduplication capability. So you're actually only sending the unique variable 4 to 12K chunk that's never been seen before out to that cloud bucket. So again, as Ranga mentioned, it could be on-prem ECS. It's an S3 storage target,
Sure.
but that the licensing is around the actual bucket size. So if I'm seeing 10 to 1 dedu, and I'm writing 10 terabytes out there, it's only consuming 1 terabyte of that actual bucket. So that's how that licensing is done after the 5 terabytes.
And that too, this is for long-term retention, which means that there are multiple copies. So the dedupe efficiencies go up even more. So our modeling is that even with this promotional package, most customers are going to find that whatever they need to retain in the cloud should be covered with this capacity. Again, like all other initiatives, will be learning from this and seeing how licensing needs to evolve.
All right, so then, so the consideration for a customer or a provider using this would be to factor in that cost. So I assume that if you tier off from the appliance to a S3 interface somewhere, whether it's within the same data center or the public cloud, it falls under the constraint of the licensed capacity you have. So that license doesn't only apply to the public cloud. It's anywhere.
Okay, I see where you're going. Let me break it down, right? The 24 to 96 TB licensing that we were talking about, that's only for the appliance capacity, right? So when you want to tier to the cloud, the first 5 TBs are already included in the appliance, and then per TB, there is a license that would apply.
Because not everybody's going to want to leverage long-term retention. Some
Yeah.
people only have a 30-day
It's more of an option.
retention.
Yeah,
So
but
it's-
some people are going to have one data center and want to use their cloud as their offsite. And
Right.
so that's not tier off a little bit, that's all of it.
And
And
that's
we'll
where
talk
we need
about
to
that, yeah.
differentiate, because what we're talking about with cloud tier is truly long-term retention.
Think of
This
it
is
more from an
around-
archival perspective.
It's from that perspective and not from a N+1. And we'll talk about DR and we'll talk about N+1 here on the other side of this. Because they
Specifically to your use
There are
case.
different use cases.
Yep.
So that offsite copy isn't another capacity-based license?
So from the offsite, so a replication in N+1 or Cloud DR, which we'll talk about next, is a separate model and licensing there from that perspective. And again, we'll get into the Cloud DR here, but 5 terabytes of Cloud DR is included in out of the gate as well.
And we will talk about Cloud DR in more detail, and we can come back to questions on that. Yeah.
Okay,
That's one question.
three different ways to pay for the data I'm sending to the cloud isn't boosting simplicity.
But not everybody has the same use case. Not everybody has the same way to do it.
I'm not arguing that. Just if you're saying, I'm going to send data to the cloud, and I have to decide which of the 3 license models that falls under, and then figure out how to pay for it, that's not simple. It might be appropriate, but it's not simple.
Valid
It's a
feedback.
compounding of cost.
Well, I mean, cost is one thing. It's, how much I have to pay is one thing. How much I have to think about how much I have to pay is another thing.
So
And just to bring it back and kind of summarize the licensing model, right? The appliance, from a 24 TB to a 96 TB, all follows a single license, right? It's based on the capacity in the appliance.
that statement implies it's all inclusive, and if I send to the cloud, it's not. It's, you know, it's either one license or it's.
It's all licensed for on-prem. If you, it's cloud enabled, and if you want to choose to go to the cloud, then great. That's another aspect, and that's not on-prem anymore. So
And again, you know, that's the,
I get that. It's just not simple.
it's again that trade-off between simplicity and economics. I completely.
There's always
exactly
always
right.
a trade-off.
You know, going back to the early conversation where customers feel kind of shortchanged if they're not able to use the entire capacity that's lying in their data center. We have, you know, again, with data domain, given the market leadership we have there are customers who cannot ever use the cloud, right? And when we actually position a licensing model that includes the cloud, they feel heavily shortchanged, right? So cloud is a transition, and we are seeing a much faster accelerated transition into the cloud, and all licensing models evolve with the use case patterns. When we reach the tipping point where more than 50% of customers are going to use cloud by default, you know, licensing model is definitely going to change with that. Sure.
Is the expectation of the customers that they would pay differently for archiving or tiering, differently for disaster recovery, and differently for secondary storage? Like, or the
It's
thing
not
is,
about-
they don't care. They
It's
just
not about
pay.
the expectation of the customer. It's about the desire of the customer for simplicity and the competition delivering all-inclusive licensing.
So,
You know, this is just like when you sell a VMAX and you say replicate, you know, SRDF is a separate license, but if I buy an EqualLogic, replication's included. It's not about expectations, it's just how, when I'm a customer and I'm evaluating a product, very much, I want to make sure that there are no gotchas. And if I'm going to be using the cloud and then discover that I have 5.1 terabytes of data, and that generates an exception and things don't break, and purchasing takes 90 days to approve the PO for the next license, that's a huge amount of complexity in my life that I'd like to avoid.
So, but we're very transparent about this from the onset. So to
But
that point,
Have you ever seen a customer who could predict how much data they would have post-deduplication plus or minus 5%? I haven't, and I've been doing this 35 years.
And to that point, that actually leads really well into the actual future-proof storage loyalty program around our process of getting engaged with the customers and putting expectations in place and a satisfaction on top of that, around that. And again, we'll get into that, but we had to start somewhere with this, and including 5 terabytes at zero cost out of the gate so that they can
is way better than none.
Great feedback, you know, and we are totally respectful of the feedback. We don't even see it as a complaint. It's a trends discussion, right? Yeah. You are more involved in cloud-centric customers who see cloud as a very key component of their use case, and therefore the feedback, totally accepted. If we had to have the same conversation with experts who are more engaged in the federal space, the conversation would flow very differently. It's all our collective job to make sure that, you know, we get to a model that makes excellent sense for our customers.